today as the Trump administration's bellicose new branding for the Department of Defense matches an aggressive new posture for the United States.
It's going to fight to win, not to lose. We're going to go on offense, not just on defense.
As the White House declares open season on drug smugglers and trolls big city Democrats with threats of military force, the object of that force, illegal immigration, as agents raid major employers across the country, including a Korean car plant in Georgia. Thrilling hardliners, but raising questions about methods and damage to the economy.
Foreign workers are now leaving the economy. American workers are getting all the benefits.
Also splitting the federal city in Congress's first week back in session, even before the looming fight over a government shutdown. Is it Maha or Aha? Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. got deep fried in tallow, of course, at the Senate.
You're so wrong on your facts.
You're interrupting me, and sir, you're a charlatan. That's what you are.
The other divide on fabulous or phony, the economy. A slew of sour notes on the effects of import taxes and immigration raids. Just breaking a few eggs to make a golden age omelet, or something bigger?
The unemployment rate comes in at, comes in at 4.3. 4.3, so it moved higher.
Let's get into all of it. With us today, Kevin Hern of Oklahoma, a top-ranking House Republican, and Gabe Vasquez, Democrat of New Mexico. It's going to be a big September. How does Congress get through it all? Then, an important lesson on recent history with Thomas Chatterton Williams, author of a revealing account of how America lost its mind in the summer of 2020 and what that means for us now. All that and our best in the business panel of journalists, including a new tool for you to use to see which way the wind is blowing on the midterm elections. The Hill Sunday starts now. Hello from Washington and welcome to the Hill Sunday. I'm Chris Stirewalt. Now, you couldn't have missed Friday's jobs numbers. Just 22,000 new jobs for August, an increase to the unemployment rate to its highest level since the end of the pandemic, and more signs of a cooling economy. The revised numbers for June show the U.S. actually lost 13,000 jobs that month. The president is asking for patience, saying that the current disruptions will pay off bigly a year from now, just in time for the midterms, he hopes.
The real numbers that I'm talking about are going to be whatever it is, but will be in a year from now when you're going to see job numbers like our country has never seen before.
Joining us now from Oklahoma, Republican Congressman Kevin Hern. Congressman, thanks for making time for us. I was reminded of the president's warning about families buying fewer dolls for their children when I looked at these numbers. It's very hard to convince Americans to endure transitory economic disruption in service of a bigger plan. That definitely did not work for Joe Biden and the Democrats on inflation. Tell me why you think this is different.
Well, thanks for having me. You know, you go all the way back 40 years ago when we saw Ronald Reagan trying to take over from an abysmal administration of Jimmy Carter. We're seeing that same thing now. It takes a little while to get everything put back to where it was. You know, we talk about the inflation when Fed chairman said it was transitory, as you just mentioned. You know, when the Democrats took over, inflation was 1.9%, unemployment down in the threes. And then we had this thing that came along that Joe Biden started spending money that we didn't have and things that we didn't need. And now the president, after 4 years and 77.3 million votes out there that said we want to make sure we change America, he's been in office 230 days today. He's had 201 executive orders. He is moving very quickly to try to put America back to where it was when he left. It's a lot of work. We need to help him get it done. But right now, America is probably seeing the most aggressive job creation economy that we've seen. But here's what we also know. When you talk to business people, as I do, I spent 35 years in business, and the president obviously had been in business his entire life, we need to see lower interest rates. People are waiting to see the Fed lower the interest rates. They've been sitting here now steady for a year, and when he lowered them before, there was really no economic data to say he should have lowered them other than politics. So we need to get on with lowering the interest rates so we can get this economy roaring.
Okay, so there is a similar narrative around immigration. We saw that big raid at the Hyundai plant in Georgia. It's part of a nationwide effort. You have big manufacturers in your district. You guys out there making everything from school buses to big air conditioners. You and a lot of Republicans, I am sure, agree with the stepped-up enforcements, and you may even say that the concerns about civil rights for the deportees are overblown. But what about the economic consequences for the communities and for consumers? This has to have upward pressure on prices, and it has to have disruptive effects on local economies, right?
Well, I think, Democrats and Republicans alike should agree on the fact that only Americans who are legal citizens should be working here unless they have a legal method to do so. If you're illegal, I don't care who the company is, you should not be here working. And the president has made this statement when he was running for office. And he's fulfilling the promises he made on the campaign trip. So I don't know why anybody's surprised. He has said this time and time again. Everybody should support that. Unfortunately, we have, these jobs are being taken by folks who are not here in the rightful way, and we should put those jobs, fill those jobs with American workers. And I think the president's going to do that. These businesses will do that. I got to tell you, Main Street America is applauding what the president is doing. It may not be what's happening inside the Beltway in Washington, D.C. that's exciting with my Democrat colleagues. But in America, I had some guys tell me yesterday, said, I feel safe again. I feel like we're on the right path. And that's here in Oklahoma.
Okay. From your perch on the Ways and Means Committee, you had a much more pleasant August than those poor folks over on appropriations. The next fight is looming over a potential government shutdown at the end of this month. So I want to start with the question of rescissions. Some Republicans, like Susan Collins, senator from Maine, have gone so far to say that the president's recent withholding of monies appropriated by Congress is illegal. You voted for the White House's initial request to claw back $9 billion, though you said it wasn't an easy choice. Where are you now? Are you concerned about this latest round of what we call pocket rescissions?
Well, certainly within the president's legal purview to do so, and I'm sure it will be challenged. It will go to the courts, as everything he did in the first 4 years, and certainly as he's done so far. But the president is, I would tell you, he's determined to get America back on the right track and get spending under control. You look at the tariff dollars coming in. I think it's like $187 billion so far. It's projected to be somewhere a couple trillion over the next decade. These things are all important. You also have to cut spending by having the permanent tax rates that we saw in the working family tax cuts. These are all really important issues to get America back and close these $2 trillion deficits that we're seeing and lower our borrowing dependency. And this is all part of it.
Okay, so on the question of these rescissions, right? So it does make life more complicated as you have to deal with Democrats, right? Because Republicans, whether it's just in the Senate, are definitely going to need some Democratic votes to prevent a shutdown at the end of this month. How do you convince Democrats, come to the table, let's compromise, if at the same time Republicans also hold the position that the president can also cut spending or impound dollars? How does that complicate the negotiations?
Well, let's think about this. We have the White House, obviously, in Republican control. We have the House, both the Republican majority and Republican control. In the Senate, we have a Republican majority, but not necessarily control, because the Democrats have 7 votes that they can use to move things around. If the Democrats want the government to shut down, then all they have to do is vote against continue to have it open. And then they're going to have to answer to the American people why they did not support keeping the government open. This idea of rescissions, we're talking about $4 billion in a $5 trillion, or excuse me, a $7 trillion spend each year. $4 billion is not a lot of money, and I think the American people would say, why can't you find more? The issues that are being cut are things that right now are being moved out of USAID and moved back into the State Department under Secretary Rubio. And I got full confidence that, we're going to address the waste, fraud, and abuse for the first time. There's an old joke, waste, fraud, and abuse must not exist because we've been looking for it for decades. Well, now we're finding it, and now we're addressing it, and now we're going to see how we can move this forward in the Congress.
Okay, Tom Cole, you know that guy. He's your fellow Oklahoman, and he is the powerful Appropriations Committee chairman, and he has been arguing for a very, very short-term stopgap spending bill to allow negotiations on a long-term deal to go on. So he's talking about, like, Thanksgiving at the latest. But the president's team reportedly wants a much longer punt, which probably ends up in a big, ugly omnibus spending package that opponents of pork barrel spending have always said was a big problem. How do you do this? Do you see you want to fight it out now and punt a little bit, or do you want to kick it into next year and do it then?
Well, I'll certainly leave those internal negotiations to the Speaker and to my dear friend Tom Cole and to the White House. But the reality is that, you know, we need to get the 12 appropriation bills done on time, something that the Congress, Democrat or Republican, has ever done in the last 25 years. That's a real problem. I would say that's the baseline issue with our huge deficits that we're having and the runaway debt that we have, is that we're not doing the people's work. Our primary job ought to be passing budgets, doing the appropriations, and getting those reconciled and getting the president to sign them by September 30th. I know what Tom Cole wants to do, the appropriations chair, my dear friend that I talk to almost every day. He wants to get the 12 appropriation bills done. I know we've been bogged down with a lot of negotiations on getting the big bill done, which I think will probably be one of the pieces of legislation that will go down as some of the most monumental things that's ever happened in Congress. But Tom Cole is working every single day to tell people about the history of the House. There's no one that's seen more happen in the House of Representatives in the federal government than Tom Cole.
Congressman, we thank you. All right, America, if you ever said stay gold, pony boy, while visiting the Outsiders House Museum in Tulsa, Oklahoma, you'd know him already. But if you don't, there he is, Congressman Kevin Hern. We thank you. Joining us now, right here on set. Look, we've got him in the flesh. Democratic Congressman from New Mexico, Gabe Vasquez. Congressman, thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Want to start with your reaction to what you heard your congressman from your colleague from Oklahoma have to say about the spending fight. Where are you? Is this a hug it out moment? Is this a burn it down moment? What do you think Democrats want to do, ought to do about the looming shutdown?
Well, Chris, thank you so much for having me on.
Heck yeah.
I think this is a let's do what's best for Americans moment, and let's not lose sight of why we're here in Washington, D.C. Now, when I go back to my district in New Mexico and I hear about folks whose health care premiums are going up by 200%, who are losing their food benefits, who are potentially losing some manufacturing jobs right on the border of U.S. and Mexico. Those are American jobs. And they say, please find a way to bring some relief to our families, find a way to make housing more affordable, find a way for me to be able to afford childcare. Those are the things that we should be here legislating. Now, unfortunately, what we've seen over the last several months is that Republicans who control the House have not done their job of passing the appropriations bills.
They're working on it, right? I mean, well, there are a lot of Democrats who say that would take their hat off to Tom Cole and say they're really trying to, and they've passed some of them.
If we were to look at the legislative schedule over the last several weeks and the opportunities that Republicans had in their committees to actually pass and move forward these appropriations bills, it's incumbent on them to do that. Democrats like myself are ready to work with them. Now, I serve on the Agriculture and Armed Services Committee, two really important committees. We haven't passed a farm bill in over 3 years, just as an example. And so the farmers and ranchers in my district are saying, when are you guys going to get your act?
So how is the immigration enforcement? So Americans probably don't think enough about how much of our agriculture comes from New Mexico, right? If you enjoyed a slice of cantaloupe this morning, there's a decent chance that it was grown in New Mexico. These raids are going to push prices up. And again, as I said to your Republican counterpart, if you leave aside the question of the rightness or wrongness of the action, there are consequences for consumers here on agricultural prices, on other prices, right?
That's exactly right. And look, I come proudly from the chili capital of the world, Hatch, New Mexico.
I know you guys, you've never stopped talking about it.
And our state question is green or red, and the answer is Christmas, because we're proud of our agricultural heritage. But look, all those things aside, agricultural employment, we know, especially in the West, has involved immigrant labor for many, many decades. And so as we talk about the future of this nation's immigration system, first, we have to come to grip with those folks who are working out in the fields, who are toiling out there in the hot sun, and be able to come together as Democrats and Republicans and realize that the true solution here is immigration reform. Enforcement is part of that, but I've proposed several different bills.
And I know you have legislation on this, and that you'd like to see what actually it's true most Americans would like to see, which is some sort of compromise here that pairs enforcement with a pathway to citizenship for people who are here illegally but haven't committed other crimes. But Democrats open the door for this to be such a good issue for Republicans because of the post-COVID surge and how it was handled. Are Democrats ready to embrace the enforcement side? Do you hear, when you talk to your fellow Democrats, there is a willingness and readiness to accept the enforcement side of the equation?
Democrats are ready, and let me tell you, as a border Democrat representing 180 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border.
And you're a Mexican-American.
And I'm a Mexican-American. I've seen the complexities on both sides. And so, yes, border security has to be the foundation of our plan moving forward, but you also can't do that without immigration reform and without the considerations to the American economy. The truth is, we need all of those things to work together in order for us to give the American people what they want, which is a fair and a humane process, a secure border. So as we see these mass deportation rates, which are very draconian, and we know that the housekeepers and the restaurant workers and the construction workers who may not be here with the right documentation, well, let's give them the right documentation. Let's vet them. Let's put them through a process which allows our economy to have the global competitiveness that we need, and at the same time make sure that we have our border in order, which we can do. And so working with Customs and Border Protection, local officials, we know what the right investments are. And just as an example, I'll say right now, if we want to scan 100% of all cargo that comes in through our commercial ports of entry, which is the largest source of drugs coming into this country, we can do that. But we have to get these appropriation bills through the front door. We have to make sure that we work together. I love
this today. Everybody's in here talking about the process. For nerds, this is where I'm in heaven. Okay. A place where New Mexico is also sort of at the vanguard of the discussion is on crime. You have a Democratic governor, and she deployed the National Guard into Albuquerque. She declared a crime emergency in, I think, Espanola. She has taken steps that Democrats in some other places didn't want to take or were reluctant to take. How is this playing in New Mexico? Is this a good approach in terms of aggressive enforcement? How do you read it?
You know, the key to supporting public safety in our local communities, including in New Mexico, is making sure that we're in dialogue with our local law enforcement partners. Now, these are police officers, these are deputies who have grown up in these communities, and so any partnership in which you involve the National Guard or federal resources has to involve
she's a governor. She's a governor, not the president.
And she's done that, and she's done that. And that's one of the key things that we need to make sure. Look, every person in America deserves to feel safe and should feel safe in their own home and in their own neighborhood. That may look different in Albuquerque than it does in Washington, D.C., or New York City or Chicago. So I don't think a unilateral, federalized approach to law enforcement is really what we need. And so as long as the governor makes sure that she keeps our citizens safe and she's working with local officials, I think we're going to be in a better place.
Congressman, we thank you. All right, America, if you ever scarf down some Manhattan Project history along with your green chili cheeseburger at the Al Bar in San Antonio, New Mexico, you would know him already, but if you don't, there he is, Congressman Gabe Vasquez. We thank you very much. Okay, coming up, America was having a moment in the summer of 2020 as the George Floyd protests filled streets left empty by pandemic lockdowns. It turns out that moment would have some very dire consequences for the state of American discourse and politics. Author Thomas Chatterton Williams is here to discuss his new book when we come back. Welcome back to The Hill Sunday. Our next guest is a best-selling author, cultural critic, and prominent commentator on race and politics. He's also my friend and my colleague at the American Enterprise Institute. He's also managed to upset a strikingly diverse array of people. His new book is called The Summer of Our Discontent, The Age of Certainty and the Demise of Discourse. Thomas Chatterton Williams joins us now. And you know, America, you saw him here first before Bill Maher was hanging out with him, before he was on forever on The Daily Show. You could have seen him right here on The Hill Sunday, so welcome back.
It's great to be here with you.
Okay, I'm going to read you to you. What had started understandably and even nobly as regard for specific communities with racially correlated but variegated vulnerabilities would soon give way to something intensely different, a full-blown moral panic that in retrospect touched every facet of our collective mediated experience and spawned a vicious counterreaction from the authoritarian right that further erodes our liberal democracy. What's your book about? Like, that quote captured, I think, a lot of it, but tell us the story of your book.
Yeah, it's a 2 decades long journey through the culture and politics of the United States since roughly the second administration of the second term of the Barack Obama administration and the second term of Trump's administration.
Ferguson, Missouri, and when that whole the whole protest movement really got started.
It's really trying to understand what happened when the social justice left dominated our institutional, political, cultural spaces, and how that initiated a kind of backlash that we're living through right now, and I think that is much worse, but that is connected.
And I read your book as almost a plea to the left to say, when you became illiberal, you invited illiberalism, right? So it seems like the target audience for the book are progressives and lowercase l liberal-minded people to say that they lost their way. How did they lose their way?
Yeah, well, I want to say it's also very much a book intended for people on the center-right as well. Yeah. It's for people who want to reject the extremism, the illiberalism that's infected both sides of the political spectrum. First and foremost, I think there's a lot of goodwill, and I think that our politics and culture has been captured by a kind of fanaticism on the far left and far right. And I want to show how these two factions are really connected to each other, and they empower each other at the expense of the great silent middle.
So here's what the New York Times said about you. They were not thrilled. I don't know whether you know this, but they were not thrilled. He does not seem to grasp that the left's illiberalism occupies a marginal position in mainstream Democratic politics, and the right's illiberalism possesses a stranglehold on the Republican Party. This is something that I've experienced doing media criticism, right? So when you tell people, hey, I want you to see the problem over here, they say, no, 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 no. Our problem is fine. It's their problem that's the real problem. How do you get people to see the mote in their own eye? How do you get them to do that?
Well, yeah, I think it's very natural to engage in whataboutism, right. You know, and I think that what is happening right now, you know, getting off the Amtrak and walking through Union Station and seeing the National Guard deployed, you know, the country has changed drastically. Yeah. And there is this kind of impulse that is on some level understandable to say, why are we even relitigating the past right now? We have an emergency, but you know, I really think of it as like if a plane crashes, you don't just say, the problem is this plane has crashed and we have to just figure out what's going on the ground. You also look for the black box and try to understand what went wrong so that for future flights, you will course correct. And I think that you can't really understand the anger and the kind of desire for revenge that is on large swaths of the right without understanding what the country was subject to when progressives really dominated and shamed and silenced people when they were in charge.
This is the piece we talked to you about the last time you were on, but it bears repeating. This is from the Atlantic, how the woke right replaced the woke left. The pervasive and nitpicky control of language is a crucial but far from the sole component of the woke right movement. Like its antithesis on the left, the woke right places identity grievance, ethnic consciousness, and tribal striving at the center of its behavior and thought. And you were very prescient with that piece, right? That was back in February when you wrote that. And what played out in the summer of 2025 was a lot of this kind of stuff, whether it's Cracker Barrel's branding or anything else. The snowflakeism that so many on the right accuse the left of, now you see very much on the left.
I think we're living in a culture of turnabout is fair play. There's very little allegiance to principle. I was really shocked to see someone like Christopher Rufo, the right-wing activist who really has the administration's ear. He just went on several cancel culture campaigns this summer, most notably trying to get Doreen St. Felix, a staff writer at The New Yorker, fired for tweets he dug up from 10 years ago. You know, I don't like that behavior when it was the left doing it, and I certainly don't think that we should just be doing it now when the right is in charge.
It strikes me that one of the big problems is the mistaken belief that someone can win the culture war. Right? And no one it is possible for both sides to lose the culture war.
As we are now.
As we are now, but it is not possible, right, for anyone to ever win the culture war because it exists to be fought.
Exactly. And I think that what people don't understand is that that weapon that's so handy that you found on the ground and are picking up to beat your enemies with, they can pick it up too, and eventually it will fall into their hands and they'll beat you more severely with it. So the pendulum keeps swinging. But I just am trying to get as many people as possible to want to stop it somewhere in the sane middle between the center left and center right.
Thomas Chatterton Williams, message for you, America: be cool. We can't be as cool as Thomas Chatterton Williams, but we could be a little cooler. My friend, thank you for coming on.
Such a pleasure.
And everybody should buy this book. It is excellent. All right, there is still much more ahead. It's the everything, everywhere, all at once administration, vaccine showdowns, an undeclared war on Venezuelan smugglers, and a raft of huge Supreme Court cases, a whole lot of economic turmoil. Woo! Lucky for you, our best in the business panel of journalists is right on the other side, so stick around. Welcome back. Joining us now, yay, our best in the business panel of journalists, Shadi Hamid. He is a columnist for the Washington Post. Kelly Meyer, you know her. She's NewsNation's correspondent at the White House. Laura Weiss, meet her. She is new to our panel. She is a congressional reporter for Punchbowl News. And you know our old friend, David Drucker, senior writer at the Dispatch, and my friend, and a guy who had the best summer of anybody in Washington, I'm pretty sure. Okay, Laura, we're going to start with you. Pain for gain is a very difficult premise to sell, right? And back in April when they did the tariffs, the president said, maybe you can only have $2 and whatever, and all of this stuff. And I thought, I don't know that voters are going to like the idea of pain for gain. So now we're getting into the pain phase of it. How, you heard Congressman Hern, how's this going to play among Republicans? We know Democrats are going to yell. How are Republicans going to endure the pain phase of the economic shift?
Yeah, it's a really difficult position for them to be in. We saw this jobs report on Friday, very disappointing. It's a worrying sign. And, you know, like you said, Democrats really want to run on the economy. They want to flip this back on President Trump, and Republicans, that's how they want to run. And so this is a difficult position. One thing Republicans have talked about, their big tax bill that they passed this summer, they want to see the benefits of that, use that to kind of make their point, but that's not going to be felt until early next year by Americans.
You heard Congressman Hern, he was about to say big, beautiful bill, and he stopped himself because they've rebranded it, and it's now the Working Families Tax Plan. Kelly, we have a graphic. How about that? Would you be amazed if I showed you Trump's court losses in past week? And it was a lot. The plan to deport Guatemalan children, that it was illegal to send the military to fight crime in Los Angeles, the Harvard funding freeze, can't use the Alien Enemies Act, and on and on and on. The Supreme Court's going to have a gigundous fall term. They have all of this stuff stacking up. How do the legal losses for the administration, it feels like almost there's a reservoir, there's a dam that's building up, there's all of this stuff back there. Is the White House ready for what's on the other side of that?
When you are over there, you know, to them, we hear from Stephen Miller often out there on the North Lawn criticizing the judges, really just saying that they have no authority to do this, and that the White House, to their point, they are going to keep pushing through with this, and they believe that they can win. For example, with the tariffs, he believes that will go all the way to the Supreme Court and that they will win. He feels as though those were something that needed to be put in place. He said it was a national emergency, and that's what they are going back to. So it doesn't seem, in short, to bother them too much.
Shadi, are you familiar with a DBA? Do you know what a DBA is?
I don't believe so.
Doing business as. So you got a liquor license for some bar and you want to rename it. You don't actually rename it, you give it a DBA. And the DBA for the Department of Defense is now the Department of War. And they have rebranded that, and it has come with some very bellicose language and action. So they blew up that boat off of Venezuela. It came out that in the first Trump term, New York Times says that they killed some North Korean fishermen as part of a SEAL raid into that country. I'm not seeing a lot of the alleged isolationism that critics of the administration had in the president's race. Not seeing a lot of isolationism right now. I'm seeing a lot of bellicosity, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Trump is not an isolationist. That we can just kind of put that to the side for the foreseeable future, I think. It is kind of outrageous that the Trump administration did this to the boat and killed 11 alleged traffickers without due process. It shows that this is an administration that just it doesn't care about any kind of norm, any kind of legal
the vice president said, "I don't give a blank."
Oh yeah, I was going to use a word like that, but I didn't want to do that. Yeah,
some stuff. I don't give a
exactly.
Stuff. Yeah.
So the cruelty is the point. The domination is the point. The trolling liberals is the point. It's just so over the top.
Americans, if you say to Americans who aren't that concerned about the constitutional niceties or international law, is he killing drug runners? Okay, he can kill drug runners, right?
Yes, this is where I think Democrats are in a little bit of a bind, because these are the kinds of things that might appeal to more Americans than we might like to admit, but it's also really bad. So it requires Democrats to say, well, we might have to take a not so popular view and stand for what's right, stand for what is legal. I mean, this is kind of unprecedented. I mean,
what was the name of the guy in the Philippines who they eventually ousted, who was killing the drug dealers?
Duterte.
Duterte,
yeah.
Yes. And so, right, what's constitutionally or legally wrong may be popular. David Drucker. I watched the RFK stuff. And then I heard the president respond to it, and basically he said, like, I like Bobby, I'm all for him, but you know, he's got some things that upset some people, and it felt like a Trumpian version of he enjoys the full confidence that the president has full confidence in the secretary. Is it reasonable to think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. may be running out of road or not?
I don't actually think that's reasonable.
Okay.
I think when you look at the coalition that the president put together, the RFK outsider, anti-establishment, but focused on health and wellness, and focused on another part of the government establishment, right? The CDC, the Department of Health and Human Services, the people who say what's safe and what's not. That fits into Trump's milieu. It was important to his victory. He cobbled together a very disparate coalition, and he likes when his subordinates go to battle. Yeah. And so the more belligerent and angry RFK Jr. got during those hearings, we all looked at it and said to ourselves, oh, this guy's really in a bind. He's really frustrated. And he was playing very fast and loose with the facts. I mean, let's be frank here. But Trump watches that and goes, that guy's me. Yeah. And having covered RFK Jr. on the campaign trail before he dropped his presidential race, RFK Jr. is very much like Trump. And so I think Trump sees in him a kindred spirit. I think he likes having a Kennedy in his cabinet, the famous Kennedys. And I don't think RFK Jr. is going anywhere.
You heard it here first. David Drucker says Kennedy rules forever. All right, coming up, ladies and gentlemen, start your midterm engines. We're excited to bring you a new way to keep track of the race for the control of Congress. We'll take it all to the Wonderwall next when the Hill Sunday returns.
Every weeknight on NewsNation, Blake Berman brings you the biggest stories from the top newsmakers in Washington.
Do you need help in Chicago as you see it?
We absolutely do not need federal help.
From a political standpoint, that's a disaster.
I think this is going to continue to be a thorn in the president's side.
NewsNation's The Hill, weeknights at 6/5 Central. News for all Americans.
1 year from today, it will be Labor Day weekend. And since it will be an election year, it won't just be barbecues and back to school. It'll be the start of the final surge in the battle for control of Congress. We're already seeing that conflict at an extraordinary level with the gerrymandering craze that has followed Texas Republicans' bid to finagle 5 seats. But anybody who tells you they know exactly how that will all turn out is full of beans. We will keep track of it, certainly, but until all the dust settles, why not focus on the Rumsfeldian known unknowns? Gerrymandering may change the banks of the river, but not whether the midterm wave is a torrent or a trickle. In 19 of the 21 midterms since the Second World War, the party in power has lost. But sometimes it's just a sprinkling, and other times it's a gully washer. So, with that in mind, we're going to keep track of 3 key numbers that will tell us along the way what the forecast is looking like. So let's get started. First and most obvious, presidential approval. And there you see it on our handy-dandy dashboard. We love this thing. We're very excited about it. Minus 12.6 points. That represents Donald Trump's net approval rating as it stands today in an average of polls. We start with this because it's the most important indicator. Remember those 2 exceptions I mentioned for the party in power, Bill Clinton in 1998 and George W. Bush in 2002, who both had high approval? But over here, you see Barack Obama in 2010 and Donald Trump in 2018 suffering punishing losses in the House alongside their own low approval ratings. So if Republicans keep up this way, if that gauge stays about the same, it will probably be pretty grim for the GOP. But remember, Joe Biden proved in 2022 that even a modest softening of hard opposition can be a sign that a wave of opposition is breaking. Okay, on to our second gauge. That's at plus 15.7 points. That's the average by which Democrats have outperformed Kamala Harris's 2024 showing in special elections so far. You know these special elections. They're look, they're important, but they're definitely not predictive of regular elections because these are very low turnout contests. But we can't take something from it. What we can take is that in special elections like the ones this year in Florida, Iowa, Georgia, and elsewhere, is which party has the most intense core voters. And midterms, as you know, are all about turning out your own people. At this point, 4 years ago, Republicans were approaching a 10-point advantage on this question. So this is one to watch. Meanwhile, our last dashboard number, 15 and 10, 15 and 10, there you go. That's how many House Republicans and Democrats, respectively, have already declared they're not running next year. This is a good indicator because retirements are both a reflection and cause of a difficult political climate. In 2022, 31 Democrats in a bad year and 18 Republicans in a good year retired. But then you go back to 2018 and it was 34 Republicans and 18 Democrats. In such a closely divided Congress as the one we have now, we will be paying a great deal of attention to this ratio. Current level would be normal for a typically tough year for the party in power, but we will keep an eye on it. So that's how we're going to drive you through the silly season and into next year's election, trying to stay above the fray. Let me tell you, folks, the fray, it is definitely fraying.
I think there's a growing recognition in this country, not just with Democrats, independents, but also Republicans, that de facto the Trump presidency ends in November of next year. If the American people are given a fair chance and a voice and a choice, we will take back Congress.
Look at that hair. All right, our best in the business panel of journalists joins us once again. We start with you, of course, Brother Drucker, because you'll have to go out and cover all these races. You'll be the breadth and width of this great nation. Gavin Newsom, well, first, look at this Trump Truth Social post. Look at this. If they will show this Trump Truth Social post for us, it will be amazing. It is a picture of the president as Robert Duvall's character from Apocalypse Now, Shypocalypse Now. This is trolling of, you know, the kind that Donald Trump is the best. But this is in response to, of course, the fact that at the beginning of last week, the president had to come out and say that he was alive, right? Democrats have gotten good at the trolling stuff, right? So there's the whole whipped up frenzy online from the left, social media, Donald Trump is dead. Well, no, he had to come out, no, I'm not dead. I don't know why people keep saying I'm dead. I watched them with the Epstein files. Democrats have gotten really good. They're like, oh, are we just calling each other pedophiles now? Well, let's go with that. Are Democrats, and Gavin Newsom as the leader of the pack here, are Democrats becoming better trolls?
I think so, and I think it's a low-cost way for them to show their base that they are fighting.
Yeah.
And this has been a big deal for the Democratic base. They want to see fight. We could talk about why this is sort of a ridiculous metric, but it's what a base of a party likes to see. It also really gets the president going and puts him on the defensive because he acts defensively. And it also then, you know, if Republicans are going to complain about the trolling and say that it's sophomoric and unbecoming, well, then what about the other guy? I need to say one thing.
Say anything.
Congressman Hern referenced the 1982 midterm election.
Oh, I knew you were going to, yes, good.
Ronald Reagan, it took time. Morning America didn't happen overnight. Well, two things here that he may probably want to remember or forget. Who knows? Ronald Reagan told the Federal Reserve, you have carte blanche to fix inflation, which was horrible coming out of the Carter administration. But because he had the patience to allow the Federal Reserve to do its work, Republicans lost 26 seats. They were already in the minority. 26 seats in the House of Representatives in the 1982 midterms, 1 Senate seat, and the Morning in America did not accrue to their benefit until 1984.
This is why David Drucker and I are friends, because we like to talk about old election returns. It's true. Okay, Shadi, Democrats, the way that Republicans failed to capitalize on their advantages in 2022 was they had weird candidate recruitment. They had a problem. Donald Trump played in primaries and got weird. Democrats have done well in a lot of places, right? North Carolina, they got Roy Cooper down there, former governor. In a lot of places, they're getting the right candidates. One place where it's getting complicated is Michigan. And we show the headline here. Michigan is a state that is crucially important to Democratic hopes, but it's also a state with a substantial Arab American population, a substantial Jewish population, and deep divisions on the question of Israel. And that was really difficult for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. How important is this issue for Democrats? This feels like an unresolved conflict for Democrats that could blow up on them this time.
Yeah, and I think Democrats have to find a way to resolve it, or else they're in real trouble in the midterms and in 2028. I mean, the bottom line is that Democrats don't act like an opposition party. What is the point of the Democratic Party now? There's mass starvation happening in Gaza, daily war crimes, and then basically the Democratic Party can't get its act together and have a unified message and say, we might have some disagreements, but we know that at least starvation isn't the way to go. At least kind of offer something resembling united front. They can't pull that off, and that is obviously a real problem. But it also means that Democrats don't respect their base, because if you look at polling on this, large majorities of Democrats are more sympathetic now to Palestinians over Israel, and a large majority disapproves of the war, of Israel's war in Gaza.
But doesn't that present the identical kind of problem that Republicans have with their base, which is what the base wants and what is saleable in general elections is very often two different things?
Yeah, but we're also seeing a shift now. I mean, Israel's not as popular as it once was. There has been a real shift in the public discourse. And I think that Democrats have to understand that and say, look, people are really troubled. Americans are increasingly troubled by this war in Gaza that seems to have no end. They see the pictures daily in newspapers and on TV. And even young Republicans now are moving away from Israel. There is a real generational gap.
That is the truth. Okay, Laura, tell me, incumbents, you cover Congress. We saw those numbers that the Republican departures are running 50% higher than the Democrats, which would be normal. We saw some high-profile retirements in the Senate. Do you see that a big year would be 50 retirements? Are we on our way to a 50 retirement kind of year, or is it because it's so small, the margins are so small that it'll be fewer?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. We saw President Trump put some pressure on Mike Lawler from New York in a real swing district.
He's not allowed to run for governor.
He's not running for governor. Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, we have Congressman David Schweikert, who's considering a governor run in Arizona. He's another swing district. We'll see how that turns out. But I think that's kind of the push and pull, is like you are seeing a lot of those members think about running for other office, think about not, you know, seeking re-election, but there's going to be pressure for them to stay and hold out.
The good news, Kelly, for Republicans is the president is very interested in the midterm elections. The bad news for Republicans is that the president is very interested in midterm elections. The obsessive focus on the midterms has been remarkable from this White House, whether it's the Texas redistricting or anything else. Do you expect this to be sustained throughout? A year is a long time to stay hyper-focused on midterm elections.
Yeah, and I mean, we know at the top of the list the president likes winning. It's going to be interesting because he isn't going to be able to run again, so I'm interested to see
That's
how.
What you think, Kelly? That's what you think.
But you know, he just had members of Congress at his new Rose Garden Club on Friday.
Is that what they call it, the Rose Garden Club?
Oh, yeah, they called it the new Rose Garden Club, complete with the Mar-a-Lago umbrellas and the cement over the garden. So they had them over on Friday night, probably strategizing. But you know, I think he is going to try to still play a big role. But you know, following tariffs.
You've done us in with Rose Garden Club. There's nothing else to be said. Guys, we thank you so much for your time. Okay, by the way, you can keep track of that dashboard we showed you if you just sign up for Whole Hog Politics. Why not? Just scan that little QR code at the bottom of your screen and we'll send it to you for free each and every Friday. Coming up, blasting caps, bathing beauties, and an endless summer. Your Almanac is up next. Welcome back. This is your Almanac for today, Sunday, September 7th, 2025. Beauty was in the eye of the beholder on this day in 1921 when the first Miss America pageant began in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Originally known as the Intercity Beauty Contest, the competition was drummed up as a way to keep Labor Day beachgoers at the Jersey Shore past the weekend. The pageant featured 8 contestants vying for the coveted Golden Mermaid trophy. Taking home that grand prize was Margaret Gorman from Washington, D.C. Gorman quickly captured the hearts of pageant goers and judges who would select her to be the nation's first Miss America. But besides the pageant queens, the other main attraction of the show was the contest figurehead, King Neptune himself, floating to shore on a Viking barge wielding a trident in the opening ceremony. The maritime mascot was tasked with presiding over the two-day pageant. The man playing the pelagic poobah was none other than Hudson Maxim, inventor of smokeless gunpowder and brother of the inventor of the machine gun. Maxim's lethal contributions to science in the First World War made him a celebrity. Thomas Edison described him as the most versatile man in America. And you may notice that King Neptune was holding his trident one-handed. That's because he blew off his left hand experimenting with new detonators 3 decades before. So whatever you're showing off this week, we hope it's the bomb. Until next time.